Hi, this is Lauren Baker of the Search Engine Journal Show. Welcome to today's episode, sponsored by SEMrush and Channable. With me, I have Janet Mesh of Aimtal. Hey, Janet, how's it going?
Hey Lauren, great, thank you. Excited
How's
to be
Boston
here.
today?
It's good. It's really sunny, so you might notice put my shade down as we were just testing this out, so you could see me. Finally, some good weather over here.
Yeah, make the most of
Yeah,
it.
we're on the
Make
best
the most of
coast,
it.
but you may argue that one. I think you're gonna say that
I
your coast is better.
I grew up on the East Coast
Oh,
in
okay.
Maryland. Yeah,
Ah,
and
nice.
it's really nice for about 6 months out of the year.
Exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I can say.
Yeah, I'm a
Um,
chasing summer person, so any opportunity to get out of here in a couple
awesome.
months will be appreciated.
Awesome. So thanks again for jumping on the show today, Janet. We had originally started talking about things to discuss on the show, and what really came up is that at your agency, Aimtal, you do a lot of redesign with Webflow and HubSpot oriented clients, I believe. And Webflow has just become so hot at the moment.
Mhm.
It seems like everyone's migrating. It's like when Shopify rolled out, everyone started migrating to Shopify instantly. Um, so tell me and our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, your agency, what you do, and then we can get a little bit into like how to successfully plan out a redesign and migration.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Let's do it. So I'm Janet. I'm the CEO co-founder of Aimtal. We're an integrated marketing and consulting agency. We're also a fully remote team, so have team members across the U.S. and a few different countries. We actually work across like 7 time zones. We've been remote since day one, and we specialize in creating and executing like marketing solutions for our clients. Primarily, our niche is in B2B technology industry. So a majority of our clients either have a product or a platform, and we really are building out like the infrastructure and then like helping to execute upon the campaigns and their marketing across like the full funnel. So we can kind of fit in any area the client needs across, from the growth side to creative website, implementing on setting up all their marketing automation, really anywhere. And we really go with like a strategy first. So really understanding what their business goals are, helping identify that, and then building like the programs and operations to achieve that. So
Awesome.
yeah, so kind of like full service there. But yeah, we actually last year when we changed over our own website, Aimtal's website, from WordPress to Webflow, and did like a full kind of brand refresh and website redesign. We just hit 5 years in the business. Last year was like 4, so it was a good kind of inflection point. Kind of tear down the house, build it back up, and yeah, like you said, I think a lot of kind of seeing the trend going to Webflow, and we're happy with the choice, honestly, and
Nice.
migrating to that platform, and gives us a lot more flexibility and being able to just kind of build on top of the structure that we built out. So yeah, we start kind of advising and working with clients to kind of bring all that infrastructure for them too. And I'm looking forward to just like diving into it with you, all the details.
Super cool. So it's kind of nice because you have your own living, breathing case study of
Yeah, I think
redesigning
that's
and
definitely we'll
rebranding
focus
your
on
your
that.
own agency
Yeah.
site.
Oh
So which
yeah.
is really cool. I'm looking at it right now. Webflow, it's super interactive. It's super fast. From what I
Hmm.
understand, it can be fairly quote unquote easy to get a site set up.
Hmm.
Um, Besides those points, what are some other reasons that you think it's exploding right now, based upon your experience?
Yeah, it's like the low code, no code movement is a big one, and how I think with our kind of our philosophy and approach is you really want the marketing team to own the website. That's really like I think of it just like a very simple analogy of like the digital home for your like brand and company. Your source for like lead generation, and also like that's the center of all of your SEO ranking and like the traffic you're bringing, and how you're delivering value to like your audience. So I think with that, like very much, it's so important that like teams between not just marketing, but also with design, and everyone on that is like working together on the website and like staying closely connected there. And instead of it being like in these silos, and even like, traditionally like an engineering team, you kind of have to like get all these SLAs in place to get them on board to build these pages, and like marketing moves so fast and the industry changes so fast that being able to like have that speed and be able to kind of use it, build templates and then adapt them and be able to create new pages, or even like kind of test and iterate from there and do that a bit faster than historically. I think we are seeing we're able to like achieve that through Webflow, and clients are as well.
So sometimes an agency can be brought in to help people get along within a company and help them work together.
Really?
Yeah, and especially people that, may be in the same building but never talk about the same project until it's launch day. Do you find, one, that you find yourself in that situation sometimes? And then two, what are some tips and steps that you utilize when you're doing a new website replatform, website redesign, to make sure that you put those steps in place so things do move along smoothly and on the
Mhm.
timeline that's been possibly promised internally?
Oh yeah. Oh man. So many things to dig into on that one. I would say, well, first off, just to touch on the last point you made on timeline. If you think if someone's like, we're gonna do it in 6 months, like it's gonna be 8 months, or like it's always gonna be longer than you think. We always just planned website redesign projects or website projects, migrate, whatever it is. It's a labor of love, and it can get very like complex, complicated, and emotional very quickly. And like you said, you'll have people working together, maybe have never worked together. There's like some territory issues. So definitely we come in with that like kind of consultative strategic approach to be like, here's how we run these projects and like how we approach this. Like we're here to really like drive this forward and kind of bring everyone together and set those goals and align everyone around that. I think that's kind of just to think of like a very simple, familiar framework. And how we think about it is just like, what's your what, where, why, who, when, and how. So the what is like, what are we doing? What website, what do we want the website to be? Like, what's the kind of like home, like really starting to like dream with that team and like with your team. I think that's kind of like getting really into like that strategic part first. Like I find a lot of time that clients and others in the industry, they just want to immediately like move to execution. It's like, we want a redesign and like, let's do it. And it's like, I hear you, but let's take like a few steps back and make sure we get like define, those goals. Like, why are we doing this? Really kind of creating that like website redesign strategy. That's what's going to be like the guiding light. And like these projects are like, even though we're saying like Webflows, it makes it easier, it's still a website redesign project. There's so much detail, and you can get very lost in the weeds. So setting a strategy and goals from the beginning is a really nice way to like in meetings and bring everyone back of like, this is why we're doing this and this is what we're doing. And then I think that's where the where comes in. It's like, this is where we get technical. Let's figure out, decide early on, what's the tech stack, website hosting, domain, the marketing automation system. Like we use HubSpot. So setting up all the tracking and infrastructure kind of behind the scenes to make sure everything's working properly. And the who, I think the who I find in
Is the who
anything,
where it gets
everyone,
emotional? You had said that it can get emotional sometimes. Is that
oh,
typically?
yeah. I mean, I think who's involved. I think that's kind of where it's like, what's the current state versus like future state of the website? Like, who owns this? And like, are you bringing in an agency? Like, who is that agency? Are you bringing in like freelancers? Is it a combination, kind of managing all of just the humans that are on the project? But I find too what is kind of skipped and where we really try to focus is like, who's the audience, like who's your target customer audience that you want to come to the website. Is it go deeper with who you already have, or are you trying to like identify a new audience? And that's really where a lot of that like the content planning and the strategy around SEO comes into play too early on, because we really want to make sure that you're aligning the content and the keywords and everything that you're kind of putting a lot of energy and budget and effort into to capture that audience. So we really try to spend a lot of time in those areas, but also kind of balancing where people want to just like, well, what's the when? How are we going to do this? I think everyone wants to go immediately there to just like planning and execution. And of course that's super important. But like I said, if you're when you're in planning mode, I think as agile as you can be, kind of having a high level plan, but knowing like we got to meet weekly, things are going to shift and change, and planning for that change, I find is really helpful. And that's what we did as well. And just making sure that everyone was really closely connected, having open conversations to get to the go live, the coveted go live date.
Even with a structured strategy plan and everything else, what are some of the common like challenges or roadblocks that you run into when you're working on these projects? And what are some tips you may have for our audience on how to predict them, avoid them, or just bust through them if
Yeah.
need be?
I would say on the first and foremost one is definitely like on the content SEO side, and even just like the simplest things of like what like in terms of the infrastructure as well. So like your URL mapping and like mapping that out and like really assessing and auditing. I know this is sponsored by SEMrush, so I'll shout them out. We do use SEMrush. So
Nice.
we like assess and audit like all the content, and we're identifying like, okay, like are the articles and the pages, what is their deciding like keep, toss, or consolidate, and then like breaking that down by like tier. Like this is like kind of our tier 1 content that we want to migrate over to the new platform, and then like kind of planning that out. Like we have the tier 2, tier 3, and the way that we decide that, I recommend deciding that as like a few different metrics, like of course the traffic, views, and sessions that come to those pages, but the ranking position, and you can identify that a lot with like, is the article ranking highly for a high density keyword? Is that aligned to like the audience that you want to attract? The domain authority. Also, bounce rate's a really good thing to look at. Like maybe, you think those articles are, are they actually driving people like throughout your site currently? If not, something to look at. So I would say we made that mistake of not doing that like very early on. Like we were kind of thinking through it, and we know that's part of the plan, but it was just so much more work than we like realized it was going to be. So I would like, that's my number one piece of advice is like, get started on that auditing work, strategy, content, and SEO strategy first and foremost, and make sure that just like runs through the whole project, because it's just going to take time and like and that's like, maybe that's where the emotional part comes in. Like ever,
Yes,
because
it
people are like, that's my article, like
Yes.
they're promoting, that's kind of can be associated with someone's personal brand, or like past campaigns, like whatever it is. I just really feel like sometimes in these projects you like open a door and then like 17 open in the fun house, and then you're like, okay, now we have to go in this direction. So definitely starting there, I would say, would be like number one mistake, but also piece of advice to focus on.
Perfect. Yeah, you get a lot of questions sometimes. Oh no, why did my article get consolidated into this? What happened to this? What happened to that? So I can definitely see that as well. How come mine's not a tier 1?
Right, exactly. And then but I think then also like with that, it's like making sure you're setting up like the proper redirect. So it's like, if someone wrote that article, do they have something that's actually like performing better, or do you want to just like redirect them somewhere else on the website that like aligns with, just kind of making those decisions early on, because like I said, it is a good amount of work. And that's not something that you want to do in like the last 2 weeks before go live. It's not fun.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In addition to SEO and content, are there any other steps that you feel that should be put in place and people should look out for with these?
Yeah, I think we already hit on the one I was describing before, like skipping the research strategy part of the process. But I think another one is overlooking the like experience of the user, especially, and just not considering like what are our like lead gen funnels and conversion points, and like bringing in sales to the process as well. I think sometimes like this is a marketing, design, engineering project, and it's like the sales team should be also involved if you have a sales team, and figuring out like how are they going to use these pages, and how are they kind of directing people to the website, and also like educating them of like what that flow will be, and building that like kind of infrastructure out as well. I think that can be like, I think sometimes you have to just decide, like especially based on budget and timeline, like what's our like MVP, like what do we need to build first, but not skipping kind of those integral parts of like, this is a full machine that's going to run marketing and sales and then like actually like help grow the business.
Also, on top of that, it's I would imagine it's probably determining a lot of like which funnels to lead people into, right? So if
Right.
it's more of an informational post than a transactional post, or if someone's reading a piece, and then you can direct them to a funnel where they're downloading an ebook, or a study or a white paper, right? As opposed to just book a demo now. The ability to then, I guess, nurture that lead right through the funnel, that you're
Totally.
pre-educating them as opposed to trying to sell. And then sometimes it's better to just like
Exactly.
get that demo, like once they start like looking through features and things like that, try to get that demo in immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah, like that education nurture piece you're just saying is like huge. And that I think there's a report from Demand Science last year, and they did like a study with B2B like technology, like the B2B like sector. And they discovered that it takes upward of 2 to 3 months of like someone like on your site and like reading your content and like learning about your company like through like top of funnel to middle of funnel before they even like want to talk to sales. Like I think that comes back to we're all very educated. I like always think of if you go to a restaurant, what's like one of the first things you do before you go to a restaurant?
Before I go to a restaurant, I
Yeah.
always check out the menu beforehand because
Yeah,
I don't want to.
exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I don't want
Or
to.
and then the
And
next thing is like the reviews,
yeah,
right? So it's like you want to do like everyone wants to like do their research. So I think that's a big part of it too. It's like let's create that content and make sure that it's searchable and that people are finding it easily when they're looking for it because like they're doing their research. Like they want to like we want to like I think nowadays like people want to feel like they know what they're talking about before they go into sales call. So it's like
right.
let's help them get there instead of kind of gatekeeping that information. That's actually something that I like realized in our redesign product too. Like I had a lot of content kind of like gated, and then we actually we have downloadable content and resources like a little bit more in
Mhm.
depth, like strategy worksheets and guides and whatnot. But I had some other stuff that was gated, and I was like, I think that this would be better just as a blog article.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to gate it. Like let's put more content out there. And that was actually like one of the things that we figured out and decided in our own redesign project too.
Yeah, that's one thing that helped us early on at SEJ when we started doing ebooks is that we just published the chapters,
Nice.
and
Right. Yeah. Yeah, guys, this
as
content's
they're
awesome.
all posts, right? Like they're all
Hmm.
posts, and then but each post in itself, you're opening it up, you're not gating all of the content. Each post in itself markets the ebook, right? Because who wants to
Right.
sit there? Who wants to sit there and look at a bunch of ads and stuff, and and scroll. When you can download the ebook, you have the PDF and everything else right there. It's a lot easier, and then it's more navigable, if that's a word, than
Yep.
going back to the menu or the breadcrumbs and everything else. So
Right.
we found that opening up that information to back up what you said, opening up that
For
information,
sure.
and then getting that lead funnel in really can help. Kind of like
Totally.
micro content to macro content very quickly.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And like, I think that's, yeah, you're really, it's like you got to nurture, like you were saying, like you got to, show people the way. It takes time. And I think that's the
Yes,
hardest thing of marketing is like it does take time. And everyone wants these like quick hits, wins, and results. But I think, with SEO and marketing, it just only compounds over time. Like you're investing in it and it's gonna always like pay you back. And then that's obviously why you do these like audits, like what isn't working for us, what's kind of going against our goals. But a lot of the time, like it'll take at least, 6 months for your articles and pages start ranking and bringing in that traffic and that audience.
absolutely. So you've talked a lot about like planning out a site's infrastructure, mapping out URL structures, et cetera, et cetera. What tips do you have for mapping out a site's infrastructure and identifying what should be kept, what should be tossed out, or what should be consolidated?
Hmm. I think definitely going back to like perform an SEO audit of like
Hmm.
all of your pages and you have blog articles, and going from there, assessing like using those metrics across like traffic, session, ranking position, even bounce rate. I like using bounce rate because that just shows like they're not continuing forward in their journey on your site. So there's something, causing friction there. And then pretty much putting that at like in a master's, like, you can use tools like SEMrush and kind of assessing that, but really like we mapped it out. I like just created this massive spreadsheet. Probably people would be like, you can use other, tools, whatever, but I just put everything into a spreadsheet, and then also bringing in like, so then using those metrics to like decide, okay, what do we need to, keep, toss, consolidate, and then pretty much making like a mini project plan based on that audit is really that's why I was like, starting it from the beginning is really important, because it's just going to run through the whole website to redesign project, and then the migration, and having all that ready. I also like made sure that we like had all the URL maps. So like we mapped out all our 301 redirects, updated like all of our metadata, and made sure we just like had all of that like pretty much edited, ready to go, of the things that we were keeping. And we're like, okay, we're gonna actually migrate this over to the new site.
Awesome. And like, okay, so SEMrush, as a disclaimer, today's show is sponsored by SEMrush, but this is not a paid endorsement. So I love utilizing SEMrush for crawls, right? Identifying issues, things like that. But then also, like, you've discussed the audience quite a bit, right? Who you're speaking to, what you're saying, and then like overall usability and design, right? So how do you typically QC, like going beyond SEO oriented fixes? How do you typically QC a site, especially if it's a large site, in terms of things like browser size, desktop versus mobile, usability? Because did I just lose you for a second?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, you're back.
Okay, 21-minute mark. I'm even plugged into the wall. It's not even okay.
No worries. You can just let's go back. Since you're gonna ask about the QC site, like quality checking the sites, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So so you spoke a lot today about the who, right? The audience, their overall experience. And SEMrush and other tools are great for crawling and finding SEO components of QC. How do you typically handle the quality control of these sites pre and post migration to make sure everything is working from a usability standpoint, everything that you plan from a design aspect is actually implemented, so on and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So I think, like we said, is like we do like use SEMrush too. So like pretty much when you're doing that audit, like taking a look at that, like what they're like flagging, and to like pretty much benchmark that, I think is kind of how we're like, okay, this is where we were at when we did the audit on this date. And then like, okay, what was like the site health? Like what was the domain authority? Like how many warnings do we have? Like where were the broken links? And I think that's where it's like kind of doing the like content audit, and then simultaneously like that site audit with like the quality checking, because there may be things that were like causing errors or you have warnings on that you don't necessarily like, you don't want to put the energy and resources and time to update that, because they're going to be like tossed out or consolidated. So
well, here's an example for you. So I just started working with someone that decided to redesign their site, and got a ping like around 8 p.m. Oh, the new site's up. So I go and I check on my iPhone and my Safari browser, which is a top mobile browser in the US. And I think they're using Webflow or something similar. But as I'm looking at the screen, I'm not seeing any of the content fly in like it's supposed to be.
I gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So then I check on my Chrome on my phone, and it's working. Safari is not working, but Safari is like 57% of them. So quality control that way, like in terms of design, and then mass design across the board, because one of the most sellable points of something like Webflow is that user experience, right?
Right.
And kind of animating that scroll through the site.
Right.
So how do you make sure it's working for everybody when you're doing QC checks?
When we do it, we actually design first for mobile. So we're like, like anything we're doing is like to design first for mobile, and then like desktop, and then like tablet. So I think kind of mitigating that. And I think you can also just decide, to your point, it's like the top like device is a phone. So like, let's prioritize that. So we take that like mobile first design approach. But then, to be honest, I don't know if this is not groundbreaking, but how we did at Aimtal is like, we just, as we were designing pages and we're like, okay, this one's ready like to go, we're like done with it, we went into testing and like pretty much just allocated some members of the team where they like just had to go clicking around and like, yeah, exactly, and like trying to like break it in a way. But also like, and it's all on the staging site. So it's like, we have a staging site and you can like experience it, test it on multiple browsers and devices. And then we created like a master punch list that was like, this isn't working, or this looks a little weird for me. And then like put that into the plans where like we would, kind of, we were updating and creating pages, like the priority pages for go live. And then kind of going back to like update the issues that we have, or like identifying was like, this is an issue across all the pages. But it doesn't sound very fancy, but that's kind of how we just did it. It's like, you'd almost like need like a war room, like in a doc, and have everyone just like in there to be able to like test and click around. And just like go in with that mindset of like, I am our audience and like, I'm looking for XYZ. Let me go try to find it or click through in these ways.
Do you ever bring in people that haven't worked on the site, like a friend or family member or something like that?
Oh yeah, my mom.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like the whole, that's not a bad, that's a good thing actually, because it's like, also when you're in a website redesign project, like you will just look at it forever and you're just like so in it that it can feel really hard to zoom out. And so when someone's looking at it for the first time, or they're not in their project, and I think that people, it's exciting. So they're like, oh, cool, I get to like, play around and I get to critique it. Anyone would love to be like the food critic, I guess, the website critic. So yeah, we just made that into the plan, like the last like 6 weeks of the project, to make sure that we were like testing and documenting that. Gave everyone like a central like document to like put what they found, and then in our like weekly sprint meetings, we would just like make sure we went through that and identified what kind of was top priority to improve for go live.
Yeah,
and then
that sounds good.
And then everything comes afterward, of course. After go live, you have this like a bunch of punch lists to get through.
Then it's fire time. Yeah, that sounds great. Like bringing in someone like a parent or family member.
Yeah, like
can be
my grandmother.
It can also be the worst anxiety. I get the worst anxiety when I watch like family members search. I'm like, what are you doing? How come you click on the ad?
Right.
What are you doing then? Why are you using Yahoo? Like it's just
oh man, yeah. Or like the best is when someone doesn't know it's an ad. I know. That's a good one.
So you had touched upon this at the beginning of the show, but your agency is remote first. You've been growing, it sounds, fairly quickly and smartly over the past few years. What are some tips that you have for our listeners who may have either a design agency, an SEO agency, a marketing agency, especially one that's fully remote, on providing quality work as demand increases?
In terms of demand, like kind of demand for services we're referring to? Yeah.
Like
do we have like another hour to talk? I would say, I think a big one is like coming down to really like defining what we really like taking the time to do is like kind of back to that, like what are our goals, strategy, like what's our like methodology and way of service, and like what does quality mean to us, and like communicating that to clients, and really like holding everyone accountable to that, I think is a big thing. So I think kind of just comes back to the theme of what we've been talking about, is like everyone wants to go right into execution, and just grow quick, but really what's gonna like save you and gonna help you out, and it's always a work in progress even for us, is getting very clear on like what are your processes, like what is quality to you and to the client, communicating that like internally and also to the client, and also, and I think in addition to like how demand's increasing, that's, if you're an agency, like it's a constant like tug of like services and like hiring and recruiting, but just trying to use like those signals and the data to just like forecast, resource, and plan, and being like, hey, like seems like we have this goal, or this is going to come in, in a couple of months. Like, what do we need to do to hire for that, or reallocate team members to focus on this project? And just having like really honest conversations about those things, I think is, and for people who are going to be like part of that change, that's what we try to do, is like bringing in our managers, but also like we have like an integrated marketing strategy and project management team under like account management. So like making sure that they're part of those conversations and like can give their insight and inform, kind of like, how do we want to support this new client or this new project coming in? Getting very, I think in reflection, a lot of the time you want to skip over like the work to do, that process development, getting very clear. But I really, really recommend not like spending that time and energy to be like uncomfortable there, and really like think through it, decide, and document it, and then just like rinse and repeat.
Love it. Sounds like you take scaling as seriously and organized as you do your site redesigns and relaunches.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's all about like that sustainable growth, and not just like growing just for growth's sake. We really want, I don't know, I feel passionate about like, we want to help our clients' businesses grow, but we also want to help like our own team members at Aimtal like grow professionally too. And in order to do that, you got to really kind of go in with a lot of intention, instead of just just like I said, growing for growing's sake.
Awesome. Janet Mesh, Aimtal, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Learning a lot about how you're handling things like Webflow migrations, site redesigns, everything else. I think you gave a lot of really nice tips. Where can our listeners and audience find you online?
Yeah, you can obviously go to our website, aimtal.com, AIMTAL.com. And actually, if you go to our resources section of our website, you'll find like a free website strategy worksheet. So some of the things I talked about, just totally like giving that, like there's a lot of prompts in there, like ways that you can even facilitate your own like discovery sessions and conversations for a website redesign project, and starting to build your strategy internally, or in any project that you're starting. So definitely recommend checking that out too, and hope that it's helpful to kickstart your own projects.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we'll definitely drop that link in our podcast roundup and everything else. So thanks again for jumping on today. Thank you to Channable and to SEMrush for sponsoring today's episode of the SEJ Show. And again, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Boston summer, and we'll see where the winter takes you. All right, have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more, and click the notification bell so you